Hey everyone, welcome to our webinar. So today, Reese, Gert and myself are going to be talking through some insights that we've seen from 2024 and how that you can use those to set yourself up to build a high-performing team in the new year. So just introducing myself, I'm Josh. I'm OfferZen's data content creator. So I work primarily with anything that is external-facing data or from the community. So that includes our State of the Dead Nation survey and reports, and any of our salary reports. And then over to you, Reese.
Thanks, Josh. How's it, everyone? I'm Reese. I'm a marketplace specialist at OfferZen. So I primarily handle with the influx of developers onto the platform, but also do a lot of the internal reporting for the company just on our platform data. And yeah, I'm hoping to share some cool insights with you around that today.
Cool. Thanks, Reese. So my name is Gert. I am managing one of the teams that are customer facing here at OfferZen. We are called the account managers. We are the people that are directly working with companies going live on the platform and help them make hires. In my time here, I've been an account manager for about 4 years. I think I've made about close to 400 placements and worked with quite a few hundred companies. So we're going to be running through the data, and then I'll be giving you guys some anecdotal advice just on what we've seen works for companies on a daily basis.
Thanks, Kurt. So just some rules of engagement before we dive in. So you can see us, but we can't see you. We do have a questions feature here, and you can drop any questions you have in the chat. And then at the end of each section, we'll take a few minutes to just answer any questions you might have. So just drop them there. And yeah, let's dive in. So in this presentation, we're going to cover 3 broad topics. The one is that we're seeing a big influx of developers into the job market and what this means for you, particularly around understanding their motivations for leaving. Then we'll look at some skills-based trends for the new year, particularly around like what you might see in South Africa's talent pool. And then lastly, some takeaways on salaries and benchmarking trends, just so you're setting yourself up for the best chance to land a candidate within budget. So just a quick note on where we're getting our data from. We've got 3 data sources. So we've got our annual Developer Nation survey. So some of this will be a sneak peek of what's going to be released in the new year. Reese will be chatting through any data from the OfferZen marketplace. And then Gert will be sharing his insights based on his interactions with customers who have built high-performing tech teams over 2024.
Cool. Thanks, Josh. I see we have some people already here. I'm hoping some more people will join in the next few minutes. But the first theme that we're going to be discussing today is understanding candidates' motivations. So basically, what's going on in the marketplace? Are people looking for work, and why are they looking for work? So I'm going to hand over to Josh. He has some beautiful slides he wants to talk through.
Thanks, Gert. So I think, like I said earlier on, we're expecting to see a big influx of people into the job market in 2025. So every year we ask candidates for a little bit of information about their expected job search timelines. And one thing we're seeing is a big increase in people who are saying they're either currently looking or looking to move in the next 3 to 12 months, and a corresponding decrease in people who are taking a longer term view of 2 to 5 years. And I'm going to hand over to Reese, and he'll chat you through some trends that mirror this on the platform.
Sweet, thanks, Josh. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of show you, this is basically a look at how many candidates are going live each quarter on OfferZen, and we're just comparing 2023 to 2024. Q1 was kind of very similar, almost identical number of candidates, but we've seen throughout the year this year, more and more candidates looking for a job on OfferZen. And just a note, for Q4, obviously it's not over. We've still got hundreds of candidates that are going to be joining the marketplace before the year closes. Yeah, I think this data kind of highlights an important shift in the wider tech job market, and that has implications for how you're going to approach building your team in 2025. So one of the things for hiring managers is that actually competition is intensifying. Seeing all these candidates, you might think, okay, it's going to make our hiring much easier, but that's not necessarily the case. It's a lot about positioning your opportunities in ways that resonates with candidates. And in order to do that, you need to understand why are they looking for a job in the first place, which I think Josh is going to take us through in the next slide.
Yep. So definitely helps to understand like why someone might be leaving, and then as a corresponding point to that, what they're prioritizing when they're evaluating an offer. So I think the unsurprising thing is a better salary is still developers' #1 reason for leaving a role. I just want to flag here that a better salary doesn't mean they're just leaving for more money. What typically happens if someone feels they're being underpaid or they're not being paid at the market rate, a better salary is usually the thing that convinces them to join. But if you've got your salaries are market related, it's not usually money that pushes someone away. It tends to be factors like poor management, a lack of career and growth opportunities. And one thing we're also starting to see is uncertain company outlook. After 2 tough years in like South Africa's tech industry, we're starting to see some developers prioritize stability, particularly after 2 years of seeing like some retrenchments. One thing that's also worth paying attention to is what people are prioritizing when they're evaluating an offer. So it's not just money that you need to be making sure, or it's not just about making sure you're giving people a great market-related salary. It's also things like, do you have remote options? If you don't, are you able to prioritize their career growth? Do you have an exciting tech stack? Or is it one that allows them to have great opportunities down the line? Do you have a standout company culture? These are the types of things that candidates are going to be looking for, and companies that have them are in a much better position to land like their preferred candidates, or candidates who are able to drive the right impact that they're looking for. And Reese, I think we're seeing something similar on the platform in terms of why people are saying that they're leaving.
Yeah, it's not exactly the same. So this is like a different set of data, but it's basically zooming into our marketplace data. And I guess what stands out to me here is candidates are mostly leaving their job because they're looking for more challenges. And I mean, you'd think with the volatility of the economic landscape at the moment, people would be valuing stuff like stability and familiarity. But really, candidates want growth, and I guess that's a form of stability. You're ultimately as marketable as your skills as a developer, so that's highly dependent on your rate of learning, and nobody really wants to be left behind in this kind of job market. So what does this mean for building your tech team? I guess just actively highlighting the problem-solving aspects of your roles that you're advertising, like exposure to innovative projects, cutting-edge technologies. That's what's going to attract the majority of talent, at least on OfferZen. But Kat has some pretty interesting, like, practical tips on how you can do that. That he's going to chat you through now.
Cool. Thanks, Reese. Thank you, Josh. So we've obviously spoken about the developers that are in the marketplace, and that's good for you if you're hiring. Obviously we want to keep our devs, but what you can do as a company is set yourself up for a good hiring process. With the influx of devs that are actually going to be going live early next year, I think we usually see we actually refer to it as our mega batch of candidates on the platform early in Jan. That's when the majority of the devs are going to be looking for more work. You as a company kind of want to make sure that you are ready for that. So I have a few practical tips that I want to run through just to make sure that your hiring process is smooth and as easy as possible. And a lot of these things, I think if you have a conversation around them in your company, it will actually help improve the culture for the devs that are already there as well. So the first thing that I want to mention is a scorecard. So I know a lot of companies don't use a scorecard. They kind of go based off of how do you feel the interview went? Do you like the person? That type of thing, which is all obviously very important. But I think if you're doing a very specialized hiring, or if you want to make sure that a lot of the people in the hiring process are aligned, a scorecard is quite important. So what you can do to set yourself up for your hiring is align on the scorecard. So basically decide what are you going to be using to measure the dev when you're doing the interview process. And what you can do is, like, let's say there's 2 people in the interview, both people can fill out their scorecard, and at the end of the interview, you guys can both just discuss that and kind of see if you're on the same page. So most important things on a scorecard is usually like, what is the outcome? What does a successful candidate look like in this role? Responsibilities, specific competencies. How does the person actually match those competencies and qualities that person has to help them thrive at the company? It's just quite important to make sure that you also have a specific standard when you're hiring people in the company. So before all of that, I would say you and the rest of the hiring managers or hiring team need to align on that. Then secondly, assigning ownership of the hiring process is very important. With us dealing with companies, it can be quite a lot of back and forth. There's a hiring manager that's involved, that's doing interviews, but it's actually HR that's extending the offer, or there's a lot of different people. And I think for the candidate, it can also be a bit a bit back and forth about who they need to be asking questions. So before you guys start interviewing, it would be good to assign ownership of the hiring process. So for example, who's doing the initial reach out? Who's setting up the tech assessment? Who's making the final call? Just deciding on all those things, just so that you guys internally also know who to ask when it gets to a specific stage, and that the dev also knows exactly who to speak to in the company. Then the next point is perks and benefits. So we've spoken a lot about, there's devs in the market, they're looking for growth, they're looking for all kinds of things like that. And growth and salary are usually one of the main reasons that we've seen devs want to move. But perks and benefits is something that we are seeing a lot of devs looking for. So usually they'll take a look at the salary, the growth opportunities, and then they'll compare the perks and benefits. So one of the most or the biggest perks that I've seen with companies and that devs are looking for is remote work, which I know can be a bit of a contentious subject. But what I would recommend when you guys are dealing with remote work or hybrid or something like that, just making sure that you define what that means. Some companies, for example, will say they are hybrid, but they will have an office in Cape Town and people go to the office once a month, which I wouldn't really say is hybrid. That's actually more remote. And I think for the candidate, if you say hybrid, they have something else in mind. So just making sure you define exactly what that looks like, and then just decide on the internal perks that you guys are offering. So this is just an example. So relaxed dress code, flexible working hours, employee wellbeing program, all great perks. And the cool thing is, if you guys do define this and update it, it's also a benefit to the people that are working at your company at this very moment. So it's always a good idea to relook this when you get to a hiring cycle or something like that, and make sure that you make it also clear when you're reaching out to devs on our platform. You actually have an option under perks to put all the different perks that your company offers. Then my next point is setting up a communication cadence. So we have spoken about ownership, which is very important, but it's also important to set up how you guys are going to be communicating during the interview process and also with the person that you are interviewing. So deciding, like, after each interview, we having a debrief conversation, or at this specific stage, all these people are going to be in an interview, just making sure that you guys are all aware of what that looks like. And it's also great for the person that you're hiring. If you can tell them, listen, your first interview is with X, second interview with Y, and your final interview will be with me. Makes it very easy. And I think it creates a lot of, there's a lot less confusion during the interview process. So just making sure that you guys have decided on what the communication cadence looks like. And then the last one that I want to mention is leveraging your network. I think we can very easily fall into a comfort zone when it comes to hiring. You've used LinkedIn for 20 years, and that's helped you all this time. But it's always good to use different networks or avenues to help you get candidates into the pipeline. Obviously, I'm biased, and I would recommend using OfferZen. We are the best place to look for software developers in South Africa, but it's always good to have different avenues where you can tap into that and see if you can find different candidates that you can compare for the different roles. A pro tip that we've actually seen works quite well within our company is setting up a referral network that provides bonuses when you're referring others. There's always a dev that knows a dev that could work for the role. So I would also recommend doing something like that. But specifically for this exercise, looking for devs with OfferZen, I would recommend starting with us first, and then you can look at some other avenues as well. But yeah, if you go through all 5 of those points that I just mentioned, you should have a pretty solid hiring process. Cool. So we've spoken through quite a few things already. I just want to give, I think, like a minute if anybody wants to add any questions. Not seeing any questions. Just looking at the chat. Cool. I'll just give a couple more seconds.
Gats, I think just while we're waiting for questions, I think what you said there around like leveraging your network is such a powerful thing, especially if you've got devs who go to events, DevCon being a big one. You're going to meet a lot of developers. People will be presenting about projects they're working on. I think it's such an underrated way to learn like who really knows the space and might be a good fit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a good word is community. I found that community is such a big thing when it comes to the software developer space. Something we've actually recently done with a few companies is hackathons, specifically with that company, with developers from OfferZen, which has helped immensely. I think after a hackathon like that, obviously they can look at the skill set of the devs. But after the previous one, I think we have about 10 candidates that the company has sent a letter of intent to. So doing something like that where, you're also presenting and sharing your brand with the developer space is super, super valuable. Cool. I see we do have a question from Stephen about remote.
So just with the Dev Nation data, I think there's two things that are contributing there. The one is, I think some developers do like the option of going to the office. And remote options doesn't mean like fully remote, as Gert was saying. I get to work remote most of the time, and I get to come in and see people, see my team, and spend time with them, work together, just not every day or every second or third day. I think the other thing we're seeing is developers, especially now that there's been a slight slowdown in hiring, someone might be saying, okay, what matters to me more right now might be some of these other factors rather than just the fact that it's a fully remote work policy. So those would be the two things I'd say that explain that.
Cool. Thank you. I see we do have another question here, but I see Reese is on it. So our second theme today is understanding the skills or the skills pool that you're searching in. I'm going to hand over to Josh to take us through a few things.
I'm gonna jump in here quick, Kat.
Okay.
So these two slides here, basically what I wanted to highlight here is the supply of candidates on OfferZen. So what we're looking at here is the top 8 most commonly listed skills on candidate profiles for 2024. So as you can see, JavaScript obviously leads the way as the most dominant language, followed by your other prominent languages. And obviously these reflect a lot of the core technologies many businesses rely on. That's why they're in the top 8 consistently year after year. One thing I noticed, which ties into the question, is SQL coming up in these skills this year, appearing in the top 8. So we've definitely seen a kind of a surge of data professionals joining OfferZen in the past year as well, because we've had more demand. I think there is more demand in the industry for data-driven decision-making. So we've had to shift our focus on acquiring those candidates, getting them onto the platform and matching them in jobs. So that's one thing I noticed. But I guess this is a very small subset. So if you're not hiring for these skills, I think it's the point I'm wanting to make here is that it's critical to see, like, although the overall supply of candidates with these skills is pretty strong, it doesn't mean every search you do on OfferZen is going to be super straightforward. For example, if you're a company hiring for a JavaScript engineer, you might encounter abundant profiles, but narrowing that down to developers who specialize in the frameworks that you specifically want in your business adds a lot of complexity, as does all your workplace policies, perks, salary, etc. So just, I guess, this chart isn't about kind of flexing the availability of talent in OfferZen, but more of a reminder to tailor your recruitment strategy to the specific skill you're seeking and to the specific kind of person you're seeking. That's something that Kat's going to guide us through really nicely in a couple slides. But before we do that, I also just wanted to show the flip side of this coin. So with those same skills, this is basically showing how many companies in 2024 created roles looking for those kinds of skills. And here I'm just wanting to highlight kind of the competition you might be facing. So a lot of the things that you might be struggling with in finding the right candidates or losing them throughout your hiring process, you've got to keep this context in mind, that other companies are searching for the exact same things as you. And most notably, I saw here in the kind of C#, Java, and Python, a lot of the bigger enterprise customers or companies on OfferZen are the people you're going to be competing with when you're looking at these developers, particularly companies in enterprise and fintech sectors. And often these organizations have a lot of the resources to offer higher salaries, extensive benefits, these robust career development programs. And I guess that just highlights even more like why you need to be very strategic about your hiring and not just kind of log on and hope for the best. But yeah, that's gonna going to take you through that in a bit. Before we get to that, Josh has got some really interesting data from the State of the Developer Nation survey on the kind of AI skills pool on OfferZen. Sorry, not on OfferZen, just in the broader market at the moment. So yeah, handing it over to you, Josh.
Thanks, Reese. So I think one thing is just I've been seeing a lot is, especially on my LinkedIn feed, is people talking about how they're using AI, how they've been able to like 10x their productivity. And AI is a wonderful tool, but I wanted to have a look and see like, okay, people are using AI, but does that mean you're going to find devs who are experienced using those tools at work in ways that actually make a difference to what you're trying to achieve? Now, overall, we're seeing a big jump in people who are using AI tools in any capacity. So between 2023 and the next year, it's gone up like to or nearly 60%. What's interesting is we originally hypothesized that you would see a lot more adoption on the job. That just hasn't happened. It's now like stuck below 40%. And I think the takeaway here, at least for me, is developers are using AI, but that doesn't mean that they necessarily have the experience using those tools, let's say, in production or in a way that actually addresses a customer pain point. So if you're looking to like use AI within your product, that's great. It's definitely a growth opportunity to highlight for developers. It's just making sure you've got the right guardrails in place to make sure that people are building the experience that you're actually looking for, and maybe figuring out how to assess AI skills in your hiring process, just to make sure that someone actually has what they say they do and they can actually make the impact that you're looking for.
Cool. Thank you, Josh. So what Reese specifically mentioned, like let's say, for example, you're looking for a Java developer, that's what you need. But how do you actually optimize your search and make sure that you are seeing the right candidates, whether you're using OfferZen or whatever avenue you are using at the moment? There are a few key things that we've seen that you need to highlight in a job spec when you're looking for a dev that makes the process so much smoother. So I think the easiest thing to do is to just have a job spec that you've used maybe for years for a Java developer. It has that whole thing of like, we're looking for a unicorn that is here to shoot the lights out, that whole thing. But it's sometimes a bit harder to actually find the individual what matches those specifics there. So we've kind of broken it out into 4 specific points that if you're doing a search, and this is specifically on OfferZen, that makes it a bit easier, but also I think for a developer to break down your job spec, and even if you have a job spec for someone maybe in HR that doesn't necessarily work in that tech team, to know exactly the type of candidate that you're looking for. So the first thing that you need to highlight on your job spec when you are doing a search is what are the must-have and nice-to-have skills. I think it's quite easy if you have a role, let's say the person works with 10 different skills or tech stacks, but you basically take them and put them on the job spec. But you're never going to find anybody with all those specific skills. So it's important to highlight, let's say, for example, like Reese mentioned, Java's, there's a lot of those candidates at the moment. You're looking for a Java person, that should be the must-have. If AWS and all those other things, which most devs already have, would be a nice to have. So if you have a job spec with that highlighted, makes it very easy, just even for someone that's not in your team, to know what you're looking for. And then secondly, when you are doing the search, make sure you have your workplace policy highlighted. I've mentioned before, remote, hybrid, what does that mean? But just make sure that you can, on our platform, you can actually select which one you are looking for, but make sure you highlight that on the job spec. So for example, with a software developer that is working hybrid, what does that mean? Is it 3 to 5 days, 2 days, whatever is working for you? You just need to add that in. And then with experience, if you're doing a search, I think it can be easy to say, listen, I'm looking for an intermediate developer, but different companies have different experience levels for intermediate. So for some companies, they've actually referred to someone with 2 to 3 years as an intermediate, where with other companies, it's 5 years. So when you are doing a search, just make sure that you are highlighting the bracket for the levels of experience. So for example, if it's an intermediate, you're looking for someone between 5 to 8 years or something like that. So make sure that's quite clear. And then lastly, when you are searching for devs, make sure you have a salary bracket in mind. we are going to be talking about salaries and how you can know what's going on in the market at the moment. But it's good to have an idea, just so that if, let's say, for example, you're a hiring manager and HR is doing the reach outs for you, then they also are sending you the right people that matches what you're looking for. So in summary, a good job spec would have the must-have skills highlighted. It would have the workplace policy highlighted, experience and the exact years that you're looking for, and then also salary, what the salary is that you're willing to pay for that role. If you have all of those things, I think anyone would be able to find the specific candidate that you're looking for, specifically on our platform. Then something I also want to mention, so on OfferZen itself, we've spoken about building the ideal job spec. What do you do then? So on OfferZen, you actually have 3 options for that. We do have OfferZen Apply, OfferZen Search, and Recommendations. So if you have a job spec, it's ready, you know what candidate you're looking for, you can actually add it to the platform. On OfferZen Apply, candidates can actually apply to your role. So they'll be able to see, for example, Takealot is looking for a software developer with this skill, this level of experience at this salary, and they can apply. And then you as the company can actually say yes or no. Then we do have the search function as well, where we give you this curated list of candidates that's releasing on a weekly basis. You can search through them based on the specifics on your search filters, and you can select a few. If you like them, you can send them an interview request, and you can take the conversation from there. And lastly, we also have a recommendations feature. So if you have your job specs added to the platform and you have your skills, everything set, then the platform will also automatically give you some recommendations based on what's currently on the platform to make sure that you have enough people in the pipeline. So using our platform, you actually have these 3 avenues that should make sure that you have a consistent full pipeline that leads to a successful hire. Cool. We do have some time for questions. Does anybody have any questions? You're welcome to put it in the chat. Cool. Just give a couple more seconds.
While we're waiting, Gert, do you typically see like there's quite a lot of like variation in how people are defining seniority that might be like making the searching a little bit harder, or we're starting to see like people converge on like this is what a senior means?
Yeah, it definitely depends on the company. In the developer space, you can be a senior quite early. I'm seeing some companies defining a senior as someone with 8 years of experience, and I don't know what is higher than senior, super senior or whatever. But it definitely depends. I would say the average that we're seeing for people looking for seniors is 10 years plus. So most companies, when they're defining, listen, we're looking for a senior, it's someone usually with 10 to 15 years of experience. But like I said, it's quite wide. It could be someone with 20 years of experience or something like that. But the averages that we're seeing for a junior is 0 to 2 years. And then an intermediate is usually between 3 to 6 or 7. And then a senior, just specifically if the company is looking, is around 8 to 10 years plus.
Thanks, Gert. Yeah, just because usually like what we see on like the Dev Nation is self-reported seniority. People are saying like from 6 years, I identify as a senior. So it's just always like interesting to see the differences there and like making sure that you've got that clarity, both like when you're applying for a role, but also when you're looking for someone to fill that role, like what are you getting as granular as possible so you can actually find that person.
Just a pro tip when you are looking at years of experience, I think sometimes someone would say they have 8 years of experience, but if you do go through their actual profile, you can see maybe 3 of those years were in an internship or something like that. So it's always good to actually take a look at what they were doing at the specific company when you want to decide on what level they are in your company when it comes to junior, intermediate, and senior. Cool. All right. I see we do have do we have a question? No. All right. I think we can move on. The next topic that we are going to be discussing is understanding your salary benchmarks.
So I'll be taking you through some data. So the idea here is just to help you understand like the importance of like giving candidates an upfront salary range, particularly when we were saying like a better salary is still like the top reason for leaving. Just understand like what salary motivations look like in the current market, and just how having a good range up front can like make your hiring process a lot smoother and more efficient. So one of the things we're seeing is that salary growth still remains pretty slow for the majority of developers in their current roles. So most people either haven't received an increase yet for this year, or they got an increase of between 1% and 5%. This is down on what they're used to getting from like the 2021 to early 2023 period, where people were 6 to 10% increase was kind of like the standard, and a lot of people were getting a lot more than that. But what that means is a lot of candidates still see changing roles as the easiest way to get bigger increases in the current environment. So for a lot of people, they might get 0%. That's typically like tech leads and like your seniors who are moving laterally, or they're moving for cultural reasons, like they're looking for growth opportunities, a different tech stack, or due to like conflict with like management. For the majority of people, it's usually like 10 to 20, 10 to 30% is kind of like that healthy range. The challenge here is someone might be moving after being in a role for 4 years, and they haven't quite adjusted their expectations to what the current market looks like. So when they last changed roles, it was at like the height of the tech boom. They could easily get 50% increase if they changed. That's not the case anymore. So by having that upfront like range, it definitely helps a candidate know like, okay, is this job paying me what I think I'm worth or what I want to be earning? If not, then I'm not going to waste my time or a hiring manager's time like moving forward. But also for a company, if someone looks like a good fit, they might be a little bit out of your budget. You might be able to start that conversation and say, hey, we seem to be like a little further apart than we want to be. Are there some other things that we can offer? So having that upfront allows it to be a conversation rather than some kind of confrontation between two people trying to get as much out of each other as possible. Reese, also, I think it's also worth understanding this as it comes to the OfferZen platform, and Reese will be talking through some of the data that we have there.
Yep, I'll be fairly quick. I wish I had something more interesting to say here, but I think just for the sake of transparency, I wanted to show you guys what salary growth has looked like. We spoke about how many more candidates there are on the OfferZen platform. But what's interesting is candidate salary growth is kind of holding. And just a caveat here, what you're looking at is salary preferences as stated on OfferZen. So obviously we can't share data related to what people are currently earning, but in terms of what people are looking for in the market, that's remained remarkably stable over the past year or so. So I thought that was quite interesting, and just wanted to drop that kind of insight here. But over to Kat, who's going to give you some, I think, more interesting kind of practical tips on salary.
Cool. Thanks, Reese. So salary can be quite a contentious subject. I think if you are a dev or a hiring manager or someone that's actively looking for work, the best advice that I can give you is to keep a finger on the pulse of what's currently going on in the market. I've seen a lot of different situations where it's, you interviewing somebody, you're getting to the offer stage, and then you realize, okay, our budget is completely wrong. It's too high, it's too low, or the candidate is asking for a very high increase. And also, if you are currently at a company and you're wanting to negotiate for a higher salary, for keeping a finger on the pulse is the most important thing. So the two things that I can mention that we actually do offer from OfferZen side that'll help is firstly our State of the Software Developer Nation report. So most of the data that we've actually shared here is from that. We actually release one on a yearly basis based on a survey that we do for a few months. It's super, super valuable. It shows you like the average salaries that devs are earning. This also gives some more information around tech stack, perks and benefits, a lot of the things that we've already mentioned. It's always a good idea to take a look at that or maybe read it a few times throughout the year if you're wanting to know what's going on in the market at the moment. And then secondly, I would say it's important to regularly review your salary benchmarks. So this is if you're hiring or even if you're not hiring, but you want to make sure that you are paying your devs a market related salary. So with what we do at OfferZen is we actually release a Tech Talent Insights report that you can take a look at. I think all of this is linked on our LinkedIn or on our website. You're welcome to check it out. That should give you a breakdown based on years of experience, tech stack, and what people are earning on average there. We do give you the averages, so you can kind of build your brackets internally when you are looking for a dev. This just makes sure that you're paying people market related salaries, and that you don't set yourself up for a big surprise when you do get to the offer stage with a candidate. I think the worst thing is when you're hiring somebody, you like them a lot, everything is good, and then you get to the actual salary negotiation and it falls apart. So just making sure that you know what is going on in the market is super important. Cool. But as mentioned, these things are linked on our website, so you can check it out there. Just one other thing that I do want to mention here is if you're already on OfferZen and you are a company that's hiring, we do also do salary reports. So if you're a company, you're looking for a Java developer at 6 years of experience, something like that, you are welcome to reach out to your account manager. And that is data that we can set up for you and share with you. So please feel free to ask. So we've spoken about salary and all these different things, tech stack, people are in the market, all those good things. But the key things that I would highlight if you are going to be using our platform, or if you're going to be looking for devs, you can kind of build your search around these things. So firstly, preferred salary. Just out of interest, if somebody here hasn't used OfferZen before, we actually show you what a candidate's preferred salary is. So this is the salary that they're happy to accept. So this is why it's good to know what your brackets are internally, so then you can know if you can reach out to this person. So look for the candidate's preferred salary, super important. Secondly, location, that's remote and all those things. I've already spoken about that. What I want in my next job. We do offer a little blokkie on the OfferZen platform where candidates can actually say what they want. So for example, let's say a dev is looking for a fintech company. They want to be in a smaller team of around 5 people. They can actually highlight that. And I think that'll make it easier for you as a company to know whether they're a good fit. Then tech stack, as mentioned, make sure you know what your must-haves are, and then you can kind of search from there. It's always better to have a broader search and then filter from there, rather than having too much of a like too specific and not seeing anyone. So having all those necessary must-haves there, and then you can kind of build a search from there. And then lastly, you can take a look at the candidate's work history. On OfferZen, we also do show you how long somebody's been at a specific company, if they're still there, all those important things. So yeah, if you are doing a search and you've got your salary sorted, you've got your tech stack and everything sorted, and you make sure that you work through all of these points, you should be able to find someone quite easily. Cool. And then I just want to mention our salary calculator. We've actually launched this fairly recently. You guys can go on our website. You can actually select the role that you're looking for salary data for, years of experience, and then we will actually send you a mail with the average salaries that we're seeing on the platform. The link is there, so you're welcome to play around with it and check it out afterwards. Alrighty, I see we do have some questions in the chat. Yeah, cool. I see someone is shamelessly pinning the latest OfferZen benchmark in their browser tab. That's awesome. Cool. Any questions? Anything anybody wants to ask? Nope. All right. Well, I guess that's it. Thank you, Josh and Reese. Just for everyone, I do see Alex has linked all these different things that we mentioned. So if you want to check out the State of the Dev Nation report, salary benchmarks, tech talent insights, and the salary calculator, it's all linked here in the chat. And you're also welcome to reach out to us at OfferZen if you have any questions.
Absolutely. Thanks, Gert. Thanks, everyone, for listening.
Appreciate it. Hope everyone enjoys the rest of their lunch.
I was going to say, we're always a LinkedIn message away if you have any questions about the data.
Agreed. Cool.
Happy December, everyone.
Cheers.